Well, we went up one time, came up 59 and then took Childcare. Followed the water line. Well, they took us home, like, a different way. And we did go to Marine City, but we weren't looking for a place to eat it. No, not yet. We'll keep that in mind. Yeah. Really?
All right, I'm losing some patience here. It's not working the way it's supposed to. Let's see.
We took your place.
Control, Alt, Delete, Pastor, always.
Well, yeah, I have no good explanation for why it's not working right now.
Select the connection guide button and learn how to connect.
All right. All right, so apparently it's not going to go up on the screen today, but thank goodness for the rare day I made a handout then. Today, welcome to Bible study. We're continuing a Bible study on marriage, so this is the second session, third session. Where are we at? Third. Okay, last week I was sick, so Pastor Mark Gertner stepped in. I had called Pastor Verge and my dad both Saturday morning. I gave my dad the choice to preach. He goes, I'm like, so Dad, you want me to find someone else? I'm like, is it just that it's 7:15? What does this all mean? So then I called Pastor Verge. Pastor Verge preached and my dad led the Bible study, Divide and Conquer. And so thank you for being here. Sorry I can't get that screen going. I don't know what's going on with it, so now I can just be a little bit more centered in the screen. Today we're going to be looking especially at love. And we're going to start by looking at 1 Corinthians 13. And so if we can, we'll open up our Bibles to 1 Corinthians 13. Next week, we've got Lutheranism 101. We'll start there. That's a 7-week class, Introduction to the Christian Faith as in the Lutheran space. And right now we've got our middle schoolers or high schoolers. I think they're making pancakes. So I'm going to read 1 Corinthians 13. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When as a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love. So starting with that phrase that's in verse 7, love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things, long-lasting, steady, abiding. I think these are words that we would all probably want to characterize our love. But in fictional portrayals, love, often will be something that is person falling head over heels with infatuation for the other person. You can even see like the kiss and the heel pops up, right? Right? That happens all the time, right? So what is the weakness of relying on this feeling of falling in love for spending a lifetime with the person? So what's the risk that happens? You can't keep it. That always falling over in infatuation, it's not sustainable. Okay? So now the rite of marriage in the Lutheran Church includes these following words. Therefore, all persons who marry shall take a spouse in holiness and honor, not in the passion of lust. For God has not called us to impurity, thank you, Joe, but in holiness. So I want to look at this idea of holiness and honor. And what is the difference? How would you characterize, how do you quantify the difference between passion of lust and holiness and honor? So, passion of lust. Let's figure out word bank. What are some other words that we could use for passion of lust? Sex. All right. So the physicalness of it. So passion of lust can be very physical. All right. Holiness and honor can be physical too, but there's maybe a little bit heavier notion to it there. All right. What are some other things you might fit into that word bank of passion of lust? Desire. Okay. And Zach?
Brainless.
Brainless, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, brainless. All right. So it's kind of just that amphibian part of the brain, that reptilian part of the brain. Yeah. Instinctual. Selfish is another one that I want you to put in your word bank for passion of lust. It's very much taking that other person and utilizing them as a tool to satisfy a desire I may have for my own desires, my own feelings. Now let's look at the word holiness and honor. Word bank now, holiness and honor in a relationship would be actions, words that you would put into that category. Respect, okay.
Instituted by God.
Instituted by God. So it's something that's been established by God for holiness, for and honorable purposes, okay? So we got instituted by God, respect. Now, I had said one word bank word that I wanted you for passion of lust was selfish. So what would be a selfless? There we go. So when we equate sexual attraction with love, we equate love with what it is, a selfish desire that meets my own needs, rather than equating love as an honorable thing that I do in service for another person. When love becomes defined in how it makes me feel, that I'm hooked on that feeling, then I need to find whoever can make me feel that way versus who can ever equip me to do these things. Do versus feel. All right, so now this real love is. So I've got a series of words, fill in the blank lines. Love is remembering. Love is remembering birthdays, anniversaries. Love is remembering their favorite meal. Love is remembering how they want to be loved. What are some other things that you might put in there? Love is remembering what not to do. Yes. All right, love is making
The other person happy.
Love is making the other person happy. Okay. Love is holding.
Your tongue.
Holding your tongue. Good one. I like that one. Love is sitting. Love is sitting together. I mean, I think back to high school lunch. It was nice to sit with Christy at lunch and not be alone. Love is sitting. Love is sitting in the quiet. You know, you don't always have to have some noise. You get to that certain spot where at breakfast you can both just kind of be making coffee and then sitting and enjoying some eggs together and knowing that there's a lot more days that we can talk. We can just kind of enjoy a little silence right now. All right, love is reminding.
The other person that you care.
Love is reminding the other person you care. Love is reminding them what hurts. You don't have to just take it and take it and take it. Love is reminding them that hurt. Love is biting your tongue when?
They are clearly wrong.
Love is biting your tongue when they are clearly wrong. Okay. All right, all right.
Way too much.
Should I sit over there?
Love is biting your tongue when? All right, what are some other things you might put in there? Love is biting your tongue when?
It's not productive.
When it's not productive, yeah. Do I want to tear them down or do I want to build them up with this? Love is cleaning the... Love is cleaning the bathroom. So there's always this funny story in our house. So we would, one of us would make lunches and the other one would clean the bathroom, and we seemed to kind of alternate. And Christy said, "Can you clean the bathroom? I just really hate that, and I'll make the lunches." I'm like, "Sure, I'll clean the bathroom. You make the lunches." And then we switched. And then I started making the lunches, and she started cleaning the bathrooms. I like this. We can kind of switch and switch and switch. And then it became her turn to clean the bathroom, and she said, "We're going to hire a company." I'm like, I see how these turns work. All right. Love is sitting beside your wife when? All right, so another sitting, but... So guys, think about this. Love is sitting beside your wife when?
You're in Bible study.
When you're in Bible study. I love that. That's a great one. Love is offering to do?
The dishes.
Love is offering to do the dishes, yeah. Our dishwasher is broken and, all hands on deck. Yeah, help. You'll notice that all of those real love is moments are things that you are doing and thinking and caring for another person. Love is relational. We're going to now look to the Song of Solomon. So, Old Testament book and wisdom literature section. And we're going to look at chapter 4. So it's just it's before Isaiah. That sometimes makes it easier to find it. Before we get to the verses I designated, Isaiah 4 and Song of Solomon 4 and 5, I wanted you to just take a moment and look at Song of Solomon or Song of Songs. It can be sometimes called chapter 2, verse 10. This was a text at my wedding. My beloved speaks and says to me, "Arise, my love, my beautiful one, and come away, for behold, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth, and the time of singing has come. The verse of the turtle dove is heard in our land." I always remember, first of all, my aunt read this at our wedding, and it was incredibly awkwardly sensually read. So I think of that. The other thing I think of is that there was Garrison Keeler, Prairie Home Companion, tells the story of one of his tales of Lake Wobegon about Pastor Ingvist. He was out doing shut-in calls, and he didn't have a great devotion in mind for his shut-in calls, so he decided, as he visited this woman in the nursing home in the wheelchair, to just really let the Spirit move the moment. And so he said, "I'm just going to open up the scriptures. I'm sure God's word will have something for me to say to Aunt Mabel," or whatever it was. So he opens the Bible, and it's this verse, and so Pastor Ingvist starts reading, My beloved speaks and says to me, "Arise, my love, my beautiful one, and come away with me." And she starts to struggle out of wheelchair and say, "Pastor Ingvist, I've been waiting for you to say that." All right, let's go to chapter 4, verses 9 and 10 now. "You have captivated my heart, my sister, my bride. You have captivated my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. How beautiful is your love, my sister, my bride. How much better is your love than wine, and the fragrance of your oils than any spice."
are you?
chapter 4, verses 9 and 10. So words between a groom and his bride. What kind of love is being expressed in these words? So different kinds of love. You might have heard of kind of that erotic, sensual love, the love of friends, the love of tender, unconditional love. What kind of love is here? You've captivated my heart.
That was just my sister. I mean, they're
Yeah.
of one mind.
Yeah, it's just it is a little confusing. I agree, Bill, to have her call my sister my bride. This isn't a TLC documentary, though. This is the language of intimacy we've got here. That we're so together, yeah. And but it is a little bit more sensual, and it's okay. You know, as much as I had at the beginning of the Bible say love is, and we focus on these activities, love is still tender. Love is still caring. Let's look now at Song of Solomon, chapter 5, verses 15 and 16. His legs are alabaster columns set on bases of gold. His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as the cedars. His mouth is most sweet, and he is altogether desirable. This is my beloved. This is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. What's being described there? I see this person, and I'm just...
His body.
It's body, you said?
Yeah. Well, I mean, sounds like a physique.
Yeah, there is some bodily awareness of that.
Her husband or to be husband or?
There's attraction. That it is... Love brings attraction into our eyes. And it's different than just, though, seeing a model and saying that person is this. It's how love shapes our ability to be attracted. And I think that's kind of one of the things that gets built up throughout this book is how love starts to shape attraction. And it's not the other way around where attraction shapes love, but that love starts to shape attraction. The sacrificial gifts that are provided in love to another person are not always perfect gifts. So as I try to give myself to another person, I'm not always able to give the best gift. I'm giving myself, but it's not like I'm always the best thing either. What role does humility have in being able to accept the gifts of love from another person? And so let's just set aside maybe bride and groom for a second, and let's think maybe Mother's Day gift, kindergarten craft project. The kindergartner has sacrificed time in the classroom, presented this thing to the mother. Does the mother need to be a New York Times art critic in that moment?
No.
Probably not, right? A little humility of like, thank you for this gift. It's beautiful that the love shapes the attraction of the gift. The love shapes what I see as being given. The love shapes the beauty of what's being given. That's kind of what I'm trying to describe in Song of Songs. And now in humility, when we see the love that another has put into a gift. I'm going to read now from John Chrysostom about love. He says, I've taken you in my arms, and I love you, and I prefer you to my life itself. For the present life is nothing, and my most ardent dream is to spend it with you in such a way that we may be assured of not being separated in the life reserved for us. I place your love above all things, and nothing would be more bitter or painful to me than to be of a different mind than you. So his name, by the way, John Chrysostom, is just the flowery tongue. And of course, he's got it, right? All right, so now thinking back to 1 Corinthians 13, we want to kind of remind ourselves on the love is and the love is not. So I'm just going back now to 1 Corinthians 13. So in this mind, whenever you see a positive, let's emphasize it. Whenever you see a negative, let's see it as well. So if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. So if I give away all I have, if I deliver of my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. All right, so that's kind of very introductory. Now we're getting into the section that's going to help us in our 2 columns. So we got love is now. So these are things you're putting in the love is column. Patient and kind. Now we have in the love is not category. Love does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant or rude. Does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. Does not rejoice at wrongdoing. Now we put in the love is. Rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. So in the love is category and the love is not category, I'm interested in your own life. Which one do you think is the most poisonous, and which do you think is the most densely, richly packed nutrition for love? So in the love is patient and kind. Love rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. What in those love is things do you think is a good, densely packed, satiating meal of love?
Verse 7.
So what do you, which one of the, so in the,
Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all.
all right, now Barb, you got to pick one though.
I want the whole thing.
You want the whole thing, I know you do. But pick one that you would say, this is really the thing that, this would, I mean, I know they're all good and they're all necessary, but you pick one,
Long life endures all things.
endures all things.
With a long marriage.
Yeah, endurance. Okay. All right, now let's pick the poison. All right. Envy, boast, arrogant, rude, insist on its own way, irritable, resentful, not rejoicing. Which one of those do you think is most poisonous?
Insists on own way.
Insist on its own way. Yeah, I was at a conference, and this might be why I was sick, but I was at a conference. You know, you get people around a table. And it was about reconciliation and how reconciliation is different than determining right. And yeah, so that's a poisonous one. All right. We're now going to look a little bit at some things about the sentiment and the mysterious hard work of marriage. So Ephesians 5:31-32 reads, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." This mystery is profound, and I'm saying that it refers to Christ and the church. We're going to focus on that phrase, this mystery is profound. When has marriage seemed like an unsolved puzzle or a maze?
Every time.
Every time. So how do I look in these jeans, right? Completely a maze. I have no path towards a good answer on that one, right? You look great. All right, so unsolved puzzle. What are some other parts? Profound mystery. Where are some other parts that you go, this is still confounding to me?
Complete knowledge of the other person.
Yeah, if I could just have everything I need, and yet the other person is growing, they're changing, they are themselves not always the static same person. So I can think I've got it all figured out, but today's different than yesterday. I've got to have that wisdom to be able to know I don't have everything figured out and I can ignore this person because I've got it all figured out. In fact, we're growing, we're learning, we're discovering. It'd be wonderful if I had complete knowledge, but I don't, so it becomes a little bit mysterious, and that's the joy of it. Getting to know and love another person is difficult, it's rewarding. I want us now to turn to Proverbs chapter 25, and I think this Proverbs 25 is filled with a bunch of proverbs, and maybe some of these you would say, that one, I wish I had that one more frequently in my marriage. And so I'm going to read Proverbs chapter 25, and I want you to think, if you had to give one of these proverbs to a newly married couple, which one would it be? These proverbs, by the way, weren't at first written for couples, so some of them you might have to do a little internal translation of how this might be helpful to a couple. These are the Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied. It is the glory of God to conceal things, but the glory of kings is to search things out. As the heavens for height, the earth for depth, so the heart of kings is unsearchable. Take away the dross from the silver, and the smith has material for a vessel. Take away the wicked from the presence of the king, and his throne will be established in righteousness. Do not put yourself forward in the king's presence or stand in the place of the great, for it is better to be told, "Come up here," than to be put lower in the presence of a noble. What your eyes have seen, do not hastily bring into court, for what will you do in the end when your neighbor puts you to shame? Argue your case with your neighbor himself. Do not reveal another's secret, lest he who hears you bring shame upon you, and your ill repute have no end. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. Like a gold ring or an ornament of gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. Like the cold of snow in the time of harvest is a faithful messenger to those who send him. He refreshes the soul of his masters. Like clouds and wind without rain is a man who boasts of a gift he does not give. With patience a ruler may be persuaded, and a soft tongue will break a bone. If you have found honey, eat only enough for you, lest you have your fill of it and vomit it. Let your foot be seldom in your neighbor's house, lest he have his fill of you and hate you. A man who bears false witness against his neighbor is like a war club or a sword or a sharp arrow. Trusting in a treacherous man in a time of trouble is like a bad tooth or a foot that slips. Whoever sings songs to a heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment on a cold day and like vinegar on soda. If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink, for you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. The north wind brings forth rain, and a backbiting tongue, angry looks. It is better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with the quarrelsome wife. Like cold water to a thirsty soul, so is good news from a far country. Like a muddled spring or a polluted fountain is a righteous man who gives way before the wicked. It is not good to eat much honey, nor is it glorious to seek one's own glory. A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. All right, so I realize some of these seem to be more applicable than others, but were there any of those proverbs that I read that you go, I wish I had known that earlier? What's that now?
It's good to see the Bible addresses verse 24. I mean, it hits right home.
Get ready for some quarrels.
It is better to live in the corner
Yeah.
than in a big house with quarrels, right? Which is another way, though, to consider this. I mean, I've known a couple that was dear to me where they built a very large house, and then their marriage did not last. They built the house, they lived in it for like a year, and their marriage collapsed. They had a big house, but they didn't know how to be near each other any longer. The Spirit is moving over there, yes. Any of the other ones where you go, I thought the one about neighbor. It doesn't do you much good to spend all your time in your neighbor's house unless they get tired of you. I think you start to kind of look, what are some of these symptoms you include in a differential diagnosis of a marriage? If you find that one of you is spending a lot more time purposely somewhere else than trying to spend the time there, that's a symptom to look at. All right, I thought it'd be just kind of interesting to look through this. Well, we can keep going though. All right, the next few slides are especially from Timothy Keller and Kathy Keller's book, The Meaning of Marriage, where he writes in a chapter that looks at statistics versus perception of marriage, weariness and pessimism. So in 1960, 72% of American adults were married, but only 50% in 2008 were married. So the percentage of adults who are married has gone down significantly. People believe that chances of having a good marriage are not great, and even stable marriages will become boring. So there was a study, a Gallup study looking at marriage, and that was one of the things that came up. There's been an increase in the space between marriage and mere sexual encounters. Cohabitation with a sexual partner has increased. So one of the reasons why the number of married adults is decreased is the number of people who are waiting to get married, or the number of people who are choosing to do cohabitation with a partner instead of marriage. What are some assumptions that you think may be driving this change away from the bonds of marriage towards the more temporary character of cohabitation with a sexual partner? Commitment, so some worry about commitment, all right.
Involvement in the church.
Involvement of the church, not seeing the models, not seeing you talk to some people and they're like, I don't know anybody my age is married. Or everybody I know who was married isn't married anymore. There's that sense of, what was it, Yogi Berra said, no one goes there anymore, it's too busy. No one gets married anymore, and yet. So here, I've got now on some slides some claims. So these are some of the claims that were identified in the study that were then contradicted by actual statistics. So one claim was everyone I know who's gotten married quickly failed to live together first, they got divorced. And so the idea was I should live together first because the people who I know who didn't live together got divorced quickly. That was the claim. The truth. Substantial body of evidence indicates that those who live together before marriage are more likely to break up after marriage. There was a family institute out of Rutgers that looked at this and found it, and then New York Times it was Wall Street Journal, recently had an article as well about this, that statistically couples who live together before they get married are more likely to get divorced than couples who did not live together before they got married. Now, a lot of factors may go into this. Maybe some of the factors in a study was found that those who live together before they get married start to see the conditional character of a relationship and are just looking for that moment of breakup. Another could be is that marriage becomes this thing that everything has to be perfect once we get married. We'll wait. And once we know everything's perfect, then we'll get married. And the poison of perfect becomes a part of that marriage then. Because as then they get married and it's not perfect like they had built it up it needed to be, they weren't prepared for the reality that you actually work in a marriage. They thought, we'll live together, we'll get everything hard figured out, and then we'll coast. Another claim, marriages end up in divorce eventually. Truth, 45% of marriages end in divorce. But the greatest percentage of these divorces includes these characteristics. Married before 18, dropped out of high school, and had a child together before marriage. If some of these three characteristics exist, those are the marriages that are more likely. You take those three characteristics out of a relationship, those marriages are less likely to get divorced. So when someone says, 45% of marriages end up in divorce, marriages are going to end up in divorce, it's not every marriage ends up in divorce. It's specific characteristics that exist within a marriage create greater challenges. And now if any of those challenges existed in your own marriage and you're married and you're thinking, well, Pastor just said we're getting divorced eventually. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it is something to it's helpful to know where the potholes are when you're driving. Another one, claim, marriage is a financial drain. Truth, 1992 survey of retirement data showed that individuals continually married had 75% more wealth than those who never married or who divorced and did not marry. And now the study drilled down into that to try to figure out why. And one of the things they found is that couples who are married are responsible for someone beside themselves and are less likely to take risky ventures. And so then they end up retaining their wealth compared to others who do not find that sense of care and responsibility for another person, are less likely to seek security and wealth.
That's also 30-year-old data, though.
It is. 1992 is a little bit older data. I don't know if that's how that data would hold up now. All right, another claim. Most couples are unhappy in their marriage, and that it's nearly impossible for two modern people to love each other without stifling one another's individuality and freedom. This would be the ball chain metaphor, you know, that interestingly, though, consistently, surveys of married people who say they are very happy in marriages throughout multiple studies has been right around the same amount, about 62% of people. Which, interestingly, does mean that there's a lot of people that aren't very happy. I'm not sure. I think on the pie of the 1 through 5, very happy and happy, I think it's still pretty good. All right, here's an interesting claim. Unhappy marriages need to just end rather than prolong the problem. This is the, we're unhappy, we're going to get divorced. There was a longitudinal study that looked at couples that stated that they were unhappy. Then they were interviewed again 5 years later to look at those couples that stayed married. 2/3 of unhappy marriages out there will become happy within 5 years if they stay married. That was from a book by Linda Wade, Does Divorce Make People Happy? Findings from a Study of Unhappy Marriages from 2002. It'd be fascinating as a statistical analyst to understand that a little bit more. It seems, but part of Linda Waite's book is the idea that one of the reasons divorce has increased is that there has been a reluctance to understand marriage as a workspace, that you continually work at it and you struggle and you work that, and now this is where we're going to go to more in this Bible study, is to look at what do people expect out of relationships. And when you change the expectations, then you change the the longevity of something. So if I think, I'll be in a marriage as long as I can run a 6-minute mile, that marriage is gone. I mean, that's a silly example, but let's, I'll be in this marriage as long as I'm happy. It builds into the definition of marriage that person serves me to make me happy, versus I will be in this marriage as I have opportunity to love and care and share with this other person. So John Witt, who's continuing this idea, looked at marriage as a permanent contractual union designed for the sake of mutual love, procreation, and protection, is slowly giving way to a new reality of marriage as a terminal sexual contract designed for the gratification of an individual party. So this is looking at that notion of what am I expecting out of this marriage? Am I expecting someone that sexually gratifies and fulfills me? Or am I looking at this idea of a place where there's mutual love, where there's procreation, where there's protection? John Witt is saying that is what has happened, and that's one of the reasons why marriage has changed in the expectations people have, because the definition of what marriage is has changed. Now he's going to say that this is a result of the Enlightenment, the boogeyman of most Christian values. But the idea is that the form and function of marriage has changed. The solemn bond where you're going to help each person has been replaced with a view of freedom. So we're going to talk now about freedom. Freedom has been designed by God. This is kind of a basic Christian worldview idea right now, that I am free when I am able to do my vocation. Sin chains me from the opportunity to do what I want to do in terms of my vocation. I'm a husband, I'm a pastor, I'm a citizen. Sin stops all those things. When sin is gone, then I'm able to be the father God has called me to be. When sin is something that I'm no longer a slave to, now I can be a servant to others in my job. When sin is no longer something that binds me in my relationships with people, now I'm able to love and care for my neighbor. Martin Luther wrote about this in his treatise, The Freedom of a Christian, where he says that a Christian is free from being a slave to sin so that they can be a servant to all. So to see freedom not as the ability to do whatever I want, but freedom is to be able to do what God has designed me to be. That definition of freedom has shifted from the Enlightenment. Who was that? Was that Voltaire? I think, therefore I am. That idea that I am now the centralized focus of my world. Before, it was God is the centralized focus of my life, and I want to do what God has called me to be. The enlightenment moves me, myself, and I into the center. So now freedom is the ability of the individual to choose a life that fulfills him or her personally. So now marriage is no longer about the holy, honorable estate that God has established, but it's about getting with someone that makes my life more interesting for me. And that is the impetus of a change of marriage to a disposable thing. I'm with this person till they help me get life more interesting, then life will naturally decline, not as interesting. Then I'll hitch on to another person that makes life more interesting. It's a hitchhiking across life, finding the most interesting car to ride in for a while. Destination has arrived, hitchhike to another car. So, no longer us, but now me. So the view of marriage as an institution that'll help me live an interesting life, it puts a burden on marriage. You have the responsibility of making my life interesting. How does that changing function of a marriage change the search of a spouse?
I can't help but think of Jerry Maguire and her saying, "You complete me."
Mm-hmm.
Like that line, all the chick flicks is always about finding the person, like the spouse that completes.
My life was boring until I met Jerry
Or I
Maguire.
was broken and incomplete until I met this human,
Mhm.
right? And it's backwards.
It is backwards because it creates this notion that that this person is the only reason my life is interesting is because I'm with this person.
Right. And if I end up feeling broken again or incomplete again, it must be that person.
Because I'm fine.
Because it's, yeah. And you're no longer completing me, so you have to be gone. Yeah.
So the search of a spouse becomes essentially the who's interesting today. There are some days I'm not a very interesting person. So let's now imagine a healthy relationship. In a healthy relationship, what would you say are some of the stages of courtship?
Well, what if you're way beyond courtship?
You can remember it though?
Let's see, I was 16.
You're 16? All right, so let's talk about how did you guys meet?
I was in the 7th grade and Jim was in 8th and we're in the same classroom. What else you want to know?
All right, so some time together. That's a part of courtship.
No, oh no, no time together. No. No, that's when we became, at the Pancake Grill in Walther League, Jim was dropping his sister off to work the Easter breakfast and get her assignment, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know who it was that caught him and said, "Hey, come on in, we need help." Jim was a senior at Concordia in Milwaukee at that time, so he was just home on, doing parental duties and taking
Helping out the family.
Mm-hmm. Well, guess whose grill he got signed to? And that's when Jim Anderson discovered that Wanda Hellman was alive and well.
Yeah.
That's what I learned later.
So some shit. I don't know if I want to ask more questions.
You have to realize there are some things that will never change and accept that.
Yeah.
Jim Anderson is an afternoon person. I am a morning person. Those two facts we both had to accept, and that's just the way.
So a foundational requirement in finding someone compatible is knowing that what is different isn't impossible.
True.
That there may be some things that we're not the same on, but that doesn't mean that we're impossible for each other. All right.
Gym exercises in the afternoon. No fail. Between 2 and 3, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoon. I'm up in the morning and outside at 5 o'clock sometimes. But
Yeah.
that's just, you have to accept it.
So how does your relationship make it past the honeymoon?
Did it make it past the honeymoon?
It did, right?
Well, yes.
Yes, it did. So how did that happen? How did your relationship make it past the honeymoon?
I mean,
So kind of going back to Ephesians 5, it is a profound mystery, huh?
well, we always, Jim did his job, I did mine. I mean, it was, now you have to remember, we were married in 1964. and we moved every, 6 months at the beginning. And Jim traveled a lot, and so it was just, everything was always changing, and we just kept up with it.
I like that phrase. Things were ever changing, but we kept up with it. Anybody remember the Marilyn Monroe movie about 7 years? 7-year itch? The notion that, it's 7 years and the guy's in town working while his wife's up north during the heat of the summer, and Marilyn Monroe's up in the apartment nearby, and they're both... That movie kind of plays into that notion that we are changing people. And are you equipped to change with the person you love? Or are you going to always see them statically as the one that you got married to and not realize as much as you're changing, they're changing? So one of the ways a relationship makes it past the honeymoon is love is patient, right? We look at all those love is. It bears all things, endures all things, hopes in all things. Love never ends. So now, will I change? Marriage is a place of change. This is the next slide. In a study of modern expectations, many of the males in the research were adamant that their relationship with a woman should not curtail their freedom at all. So men were asked, what is a strong man in a marriage? That was kind of the lead question into this. And multiple men chose that a relationship with a woman should not curtail their freedom. Yikes is right. Traditionally, a look back at marriages saw that marriages were a place where men learn how to conduct new, more interdependent relationships. They learned in the marriage a denial of one's own desires, and they got better equipped to serve others. That idea of a marriage not being a place that you arrive into after you have everything figured out, but that together you're learning and growing and becoming more interdependent. That idea of marriage as a place of growth changed when it was that I will marry once I have everything figured out, and then I'll marry the person that doesn't change me. So what happens in a marriage if a person does not want to learn denial of their own desires? Let's give you an example. What happens if you have two people who are married, and one of them is the governor of California, and he has a maid in the house that he is attracted to and desires that he can do whatever he wants, and that marriage isn't a place for a denial of one's own desire? What does that bodybuilder do? Just as an example. He has a son with his maid. Because marriage isn't going to curtail his freedom. Or you've got, was it Eric Weiner, Bill Clinton? You can just go through a list of modern men that did not see marriage as a place where they should be denied. It's
Well, I'm going back to 1 Corinthians. It becomes insisting in its own way, irritable, resentful.
yeah. Love is not irritable, resentful, insisting in one's own way. When we start to see that I don't need someone to help me grow and discover and become a better person, but I'm already that, you're just going to make me more interesting, more fun, and then it becomes disposable. It's when it's over, it's over. So we're going to look now at Ephesians 5:21. And Ephesians 5:21 is going to have us think about a key ingredient in a marriage. So Ephesians 5:21. Would someone read that brief verse for us?
Submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ.
All right, so how does Ephesians 5:21 submit to one another out of reverence for Christ help us understand a traditional function of marriage? If a traditional function of marriage might be a place where I learn new interdependent relationships, I learn a denial of my own desire. I learn how to be better equipped to serve others. How does this verse kind of tie into that? So if I'm going to submit, I'm going to be able to live under the mission of another. And in Ephesians 5:21, whose mission am I living under? The mission of Christ. And the person that I'm going to be with, submit to one another. The person I am with is also submitting in reverence to Christ. So we're both together under Christ, under this common mission of love and mercy and forgiveness and compassion, all those 1 Corinthians things. Then we are also together submitting under Christ, but then we could submit to one another because we realize that we are both living in a union where we are humbly together. So that submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. What makes that hard, though? What makes submitting to another hard?
You wanna do what you wanna do.
I want to do what I want to do. That is exactly, I think, the big challenge of the individual freedom versus freedom to be able to live in the vocation God has called me into. If I am the head of my life, I'm the capitan, I am the big cheese, then I should be able to do whatever I want, and anything that gets in my way is the thing that I need to get rid of. That marriage doesn't last very long. But if I am living under the mission of Christ, then everything I do and say and think is done in union with the purposes of Christ. And now I'm not the big cheese, but the mission of Christ is the big cheese. And now I'm living under that common mission. Another thing that makes that hard, though, is if I don't spend time in the Word of God. I don't spend time living in the Word of God, then I misunderstand and I can forget what God's desire and mission is for me. So this biblical design of marriage that we're looking at in this chapter, part of it is the secret of marriage, this profound mystery. That is how he ends this section when he says this is a profound mystery, and I'm talking about the relationship between Christ and his church. But husbands, love your wives, and wives, respect your husbands. This profound mystery has gotten more and more mysterious. What are some ways we as a church can unveil the mystery of marriage? So if we want to strengthen marriage now and we want to restore kind of the vocational character of marriage back, what do you think maybe some helpful kind of just logistical things you think a church could do to help support marriages?
Well, when you marry, you make a vow, a promise that you're gonna be together till death do you part.
So we
Take it serious.
speak clearly these vows. As a pastor, I've officiated at a number of weddings. I'm not really a keep count kind of guy, but I have at the beginning I would give couples, if you want to write your own vows, that's okay, but I need to see them ahead of time. And interestingly, I've never had a couple that want to write their own vows. Contrary to this thought that I had that I would have a number of couples wanting to do that. And I just, several years ago, stopped giving that as an option. I just said, here are the vows. And just kind of sticking firm with, and then asking them, what do you think is easy about these vows? What do you think is hard? And kind of spending some time just talking about them. All right, so vows. What was another logistical, practical thing you think churches could do more of to help strengthen marriages?
Premarital counseling.
Premarital counseling, yeah. What did your premarital counseling look like?
Well, he looked like our pastor. But we went through a questionnaire. I think there were 200 questions that I had to answer, and then Doug had to answer those same questions. And then they rated us with compatibility, and we had discussions on areas where maybe we had some.
Yeah, do you remember, was it Prepare and Rich, maybe, might have been it? Another one, Zoe Score is another one that's out
Oh,
there.
Zoe, I think sounds.
Zoe
familiar.
sounds familiar, okay.
Yeah.
That's the one that the pastors at our Shepherd utilize, Zoe Score.
Okay.
And it looks at 4 cornerstones of character and compatibility and conflict resolution and communication, and then 9 pillars on top of that, including finance and family. Zoe Score sounds familiar to you as well. Zoe Score was written and developed by a pastor, Brian Solomon, who's now pastor, I think, in the Lutheran Congregations and Mission for Christ, I think, or maybe the NALC. Anyways, he had his PhD in family therapy and tried to look at research and compatibility. And when you take a Zoe Score, you get a research score and you get a couple score. And your research score is how much you agree with the most modern research of what a healthy marriage would look like. And then you have how many times you agreed. So like you could agree killing rabbits is a good idea, and the research would probably disagree with that. But at least you had a good couple score of compatibility, I suppose. All right, so premarital counseling. All right. Now, interesting, most Lutheran churches don't do it like in a group setting, but a number of Catholic parishes, they'll have like a pre-Cana workshop a weekend. Thoughts, what do you think would be big picture? Probably a number of you did individual premarital counseling. Do you think that weekend workshop type idea would have been better, or did you like that kind of?
They both got their merits.
They got their merits, yeah. Aaron, what did you?
Megan had us do both. I guess we needed it, so we did the Lutheran one-on-one and then the Catholic all together party.
Which one did you like?
The one-on-one.
Okay, and which one did she like?
Just to be
Well, I don't
anonymous
need to ask
in
her.
the-
I'll ask her later.
Yeah, ask her later. But it's easy to be anonymous in the large setting.
Mm-hmm. All right, so premarital workshops, talking about vows. What are some other things that you think churches can do to help support and strengthen healthy marriages?
Well, once in a while, you could have a biblical design on marriage.
Having Bible study. All right.
Relationship.
Yeah, go ahead.
Relationships and just having the ability to witness and interact with different couples.
Yeah, creating that opportunity for couples to see other couples, and that time for honesty and sharing, and not have to pretend like every couple has everything figured out. It must be just only us. But as you're together, you start to see that. Yeah, Kale?
I was going to say something similar to like couples events.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of churches, it's focused around either like younger people, like youth, or people with kids. You know, if you're like us,
Yeah.
married, no kids, it's kind of like, all right, what are we supposed to do? There's not a lot of events. We don't have kids. We're not in the youth group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. Having some time to support and encourage couples to be together. We will continue in this Bible study. Next week, we'll be talking about one of the reasons marriages are powerful and functional for society. So the power of marriage to be able to place where you can support, forgive, and encourage. We'll look at so today was kind of that profound mystery of marriage. Unveiling that mystery gives us that confidence that it is a healthy place for healthy people and unhealthy, wherever we're at, to be able to say, this is a relationship that I want to be in. Let's now close with prayer. Heavenly Father, may our marriages always be living pictures of Christ's love and forgiveness. May you give each of us, no matter how we serve in our families, how we serve in society, that confidence that we are your child, we are your servant, and that through Jesus Christ we are being given opportunities to love and care for others. In the name of Jesus, amen. Thank you for coming.